Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. O descendant of Kuru, Brahma, the most independent demigod of the universe, accompanied by his followers, came to see the terrible fight for the sake of the world between the demon and the personality of Godhead, who appeared in the form of a boar. Purport. The fight between the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the demon is compared to a fight between bulls for the sake of a cow. The earth planet is also called Go, or cow. As bulls fight between themselves to ascertain who will have union with the cow, there is always a constant fight between the demons and the Supreme Lord, or his representative, for supremacy over the earth. Here the Lord is significantly described as Yagyavayava. One should not consider the Lord to have the body of an ordinary boar. He can assume any form, and he possesses all such forms eternally. It is from him that all other forms have emanated. This boar form is not to be considered the form of an ordinary hog. His body is actually full of yagya, or worshipful offerings. Yagya, sacrifices, are offered to Vishnu. Yagya means the body of Vishnu. His body is not material. Therefore, he should not be taken to be an ordinary boar. Brahma is described in this verse as Svarat. Actually, full independence is exclusive to the Lord himself. But as part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, every living entity has a minute quantity of independence. Each and every one of the living entities within this universe has this minute independence. But Brahma, being the chief of all living entities, has a greater potential of independence than any other. He is the representative of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and has been assigned to preside over universal affairs. All other demigods work for him. Therefore, he is described here as Svarat. He is always accompanied by great sages and transcendentalists, all of whom came to see the bullfight between the demon and the Lord. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtha Bhutale Srimad Bhakti Vigasa Swaminiti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtha Bhutale Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Daityasya Yagya Vayavasya Maya Grihita Varaha Tanor Mahatmanaha Kauravya Mahyan Dvishator Vimardanam Didrikshur Aga Drishibhir Vritak Swarat Brahma. O descendant of Kuru, Brahma, the most independent demigod of the universe, accompanied by his followers, came to see the terrible fight for the sake of the world between the demon and the personality of Godhead, who appeared in the form of a boar. It's interesting how Srila Prabhupada says it. Each and every one of the living entities within this universe has this minute independence, but Brahma, being the chief of all living entities, has a greater potential of independence than any other. He is the representative of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he has been assigned to preside over universal affairs. All other demigods work for him. It's like he is CEO of a company, so all other demigods work for him. It's interesting how I remember while we were visiting India, then we spoke with one gentleman on the train, and he was appreciating how Srila Prabhupada could present such complex and elevated philosophy in a very simple language so that everybody could understand. And I heard many devotees say things like that they appreciate all the writings of previous acharyas. They even appreciate many nice writings by Srila Prabhupada's disciples. But they said that somehow Srila Prabhupada's books are special. In many ways they are special. And one of the ways in which they are special is this, as this elderly gentleman on the train said, that Srila Prabhupada was especially empowered to present this very elevated and actually very complex topics in very simple language so that Krishna consciousness could be spread far and wide. It's one thing to spread some kind of knowledge amongst intellectuals, those who have the capacity for studying, learning great amounts of, absorbing and digesting great amounts of knowledge, or those who have some other similar tendencies, but to present something so sacred and something so, in one sense, complex. In another sense, it's very simple, but there are many details that can be analyzed, and therefore it gets complex after some time. So Srila Prabhupada managed to present this very, very complex knowledge far and wide, and it's a very great achievement, actually. And I remember often, I also hear it often, this Srila Prabhupada's purport to the Maha Mantra, which is it's very interesting how Srila Prabhupada says that in this world everyone is trying to exploit the resources of material nature. So there is this exploitive mentality which is present in all the living entities in this world. And it's actually what makes this world what it is. This tendency to exploit is something which is a thing of this world. It's not present in the spiritual world. It's what makes this material world material, this consciousness of exploitation, as opposed to love, which is not desiring anything for oneself and just desiring to give, just desiring to please the object of love, which is, in the case of the spiritual world, it's Krishna. And on the opposite side we have exploitation, which means we want to take. So this material world is tainted by this flaw that everyone in this world is selfish to a greater or to a smaller extent, but selfishness is there nonetheless. Actually, we spoke about it not too long ago, that we cannot avoid selfishness. Merely by being born in a material body, one is forced to be selfish. We have to eat, we have to sleep, we have to do so many things. And in the case where we need to prioritize our needs with the needs of others, nature just forces us to, at some point in time, choose our needs over the needs of others, because if we are to survive, then we have to eat. And if the situation comes to that extreme, that it's either me or you, then if we want to survive, then we have to choose us. If we don't want to survive, which is usually not the case in this world, everybody wants to survive, then we might pick somebody else. Of course, there are examples of people in this world sacrificing themselves for others, like parents for their children, or friends for other friends, or spouses for one another. So there are examples, but in general, this world is predominated by selfishness, and this selfishness comes from this original Adi selfishness, and that's the choice not to love Krishna. And then everything else comes forward from that, this original selfishness. So that's one thing, that this world is just full of selfishness. The other thing which is very much prominent in this world, which is mentioned here in the purport, Brahma is mentioned as Svarat, and he's often called by that name, which means independent, one who is self-illuminated, one who is... And Prabhupada says here, it means basically one who has a greater degree of independence than many others in this world. Actually, all other ordinary living entities have a lesser degree of independence than Brahma. He is like the supreme among the demigods. And it's one of the things that everybody wants to do in this world, to be independent. To be dependent on someone is considered a weakness. Because, why? Because this world is selfish by nature. Living entities in this world are quite selfish by nature. So if we become dependent on somebody else, then we could get exploited. And it's not something that we would like. It's not something that living entities like. They don't like to be exploited. They like to exploit others, as His Holiness Sridhar Swami said. There is a saying, do unto others before they do it to you. That was a kind of a joke. Supposedly, Lord Jesus Christ said a different thing, but it sounds similar. Do unto others as you would the others do unto you. So do to others what you wish that the others do to you. So if you want others to love you, then you should also love others. If you want that you be given things, then you should give. If you want love, you should return with love. You should love. So, but Maharaj said, do unto others before they do it to you. That's the motto of this world. Do selfish acts to others before they manage to be selfish towards you. And there's a lot of that in this world. Therefore, there are so many divisions, so many conflicts. You have the cat society and you have the bird society, or the mouse society, perhaps you could say. And they're enemies. The cat wants to eat the mouse, and the mouse wants to escape from the cat. And one time, when we caught a mouse here in our non-violent traps, he just enters inside and the cage closes, and then we carry them out to the nature so that they can continue to live. And I took the trap and I just placed it in front of the temple on the floor, on the ground, in front of the door, just to close the door and lock the door. And then it was already dark. And from the other side of the parking lot, the cat saw this scene and she immediately ran towards the trap. I don't know how she could see the mouse from such far distance, but it was like, the meal is here, and the mouse was freaking out, so I just picked up the trap and held it in the air like this, and then the cat was, oh. And then immediately, I've done something wrong, then quick, try to be cute, and then she laid on the ground and tried to be sweet. So that's what they do, You have something that I want, therefore I will be nice and sweet and produce nice sounds so that nice cat here, eat the mouse. But I've wanted to save the mouse, so she will not starve, she will find something else to eat. Actually, I don't know if it was a he or a she, but anyway, we could call it, I guess. It will not starve, it will have something else to eat. So that's this world, and it's cats and mice, it's cats and birds. As Prabhupada often said, cats and dogs. The dogs are barking at cats, and the cats are running away from the dogs. There's that nice story of who was it who was The mouse wanted to become a cat so that he would not be troubled by cats. And then he was troubled by dogs. Then he asked the sage, please make me a dog. And he made him a dog. And then there was some other kind of trouble. And in the end, he became the tiger by the blessings of the sage. Then he wanted to eat the sage, his very benefactor. And then the sage cursed him, now you again become a mouse. So that's the way things are in this world. We are threatened by some, and we consider ourselves unfortunate and oppressed, and we want to rise higher so that we will not be oppressed by anybody else. And then we rise higher gradually, step by step. And then when we rise higher, often what people do is they start to exploit others because they are higher and they can do it. They have the power. So that's how it is with power in this world. Everybody tries to get it because they feel that they don't have enough. They don't want to be oppressed. They don't want to be exploited. But when when opportunities present themselves, then often those same freedom fighters and justice fighters start to, unfortunately, oppress others. That's the way with power in this world. And that's basically the history of the world from time immemorial. It's just one society trying to become more powerful, trying to rise above others so as to not be exploited. And then in the end, when they reach that power, when they come to the position of power, they start to oppress others. So it's another wheel. We have the wheel of samsara, repeated birth and death, and this is like another wheel in the material world. Oppression and being oppressed. So therefore, living beings want to be independent so that they don't have to, they lower the chance of being exploited by others. And an interesting contrast to that is the reality of the spiritual world, where originally dependence, as everything else in this world, comes from the spiritual world. It's called like a reflection. This world is like a reflection, a perverted reflection, Srila Prabhupada said, of the spiritual world. Dependence also exists in the spiritual world, but it's a different kind of dependence. And the Lord himself chooses to be dependent on his devotees. So that Mother Yashoda, she feeds him. She thinks, if I don't take care of my child, then something bad will happen to him. Nanda Maharaj also. Balaram, Krishna's elder brother, also has this feeling of being older and protecting Krishna. Krishna's devotees are dependent on Krishna. Krishna is dependent on his devotees. So in that other world where selfishness does not exist, then dependence is not a problem. Everybody is dependent on somebody, and everybody is happy because everybody ultimately depends on the Lord, who is Suhridam Sarvabhutanam, the best well-wishing friend of everybody. So if we enter that network of dependence, then there is no problem. But in this world, people want to exploit, the living entities want to exploit and enjoy, and therefore there is so much trouble. This example from the beginning of the purport, the bulls fight between themselves to ascertain who will have union with the cow. It's something also which is prominent in all societies, not just cow and bull society, it's everywhere. So any example we take, the same pattern is there. You have a certain thing or a certain person or a certain resource. I think the best term is maybe a resource, because resources can be exploited, and that's usually how living entities view even other living beings in this world, as resources, something to be consumed if you can. If you cannot, then you take care and you try to avoid it because it's troublesome. But if you can exploit it, then it's a resource. Animals are resources today's world. They are not living beings. They are exploited. It's like you have oil in the earth, you just dig a hole and oil comes out. That's a resource. And poor chicken is also a resource. It behaves a little bit differently than oil. You cannot dig them out of the ground. You have to take care of them for a little while they grow and eat and grow and eat and grow and eat, and then just resource. You only have to take care of them so that they don't run away. And similarly, like that is done with all other living beings. So therefore, it sometimes sounds cruel when even living beings in the Bhagavatam are referred to as the objects of the senses, but that's exactly how an exploitive person, a person who has this mentality of exploitation, that's exactly how they see others, as objects of the senses. They're not people, persons, living beings, jiva. They're just objects for their senses. So, as Srila Prabhupada said, again, another interesting, simple and very powerful analogy. There can be no peace in the society of thieves. So thieves may make a union or a team up with other thieves and try to be honest among themselves and steal somewhere else. But because this tendency towards dishonesty is there will not be peace between the thieves. So in this world, therefore, there is always conflict, sometimes a very serious conflict. And then as long as it's happening somewhere else, then it's okay. It's just the nature of this world. Don't be too attached. Don't give way to grief. Don't this, don't that. But when it starts happening in, as they say, in one's own backyard, then it becomes a problem. Then people start crying and things like that. So that's a problem. As soon as it happened once in this world, then we can be sure that it's possible, and it can happen again, and it can perhaps happen to us also. So therefore, a person who with that kind of vision looks upon this world, as the Bhagavatam says, then they see that this world is, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, dukkhalayam ashashvatam. It's a temporary place full of misery. And since misery is an option here, therefore, just statistically speaking, it's just a matter of time before it happens to us. And whatever there is in the world, very terrible, very, very terrible, very bad, terrible, that's happening. People usually think it will not happen to me, but the possibility is there. And as long as it does not happen to me, then the optimism is still there. But when it does, then people start being very, very, very much hurt by that. Perhaps another example from the Mahabharata about Duryodhana. On a few occasions, something extremely bad happened, and then he lost all hope. And then he could begin to see this world for what it is, but it did not last long. As long as there is hope for enjoyment, for success in this world, in worldly terms, not success in terms of devotional service, but success in worldly terms, in terms of trying to exploit the resources of material nature, as Srila Prabhupada said in the purport to the Mahamantra. As long as there's hope, then everything's okay. But when the living entity becomes disappointed with this world, then again, he tries to find a solution without surrendering to the Lord. That's what Srila Prabhupada writes in one of the purports in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. People want to enjoy, then they fail, then they become frustrated, and then They just want to give up everything and just merge into some kind of nirvana. Yeah. So as Prabhupada said in that purport, one needs to transcend all those kinds of selfishness and avoiding the Lord by either trying to enjoy this world to the fullest extent or trying to avoid suffering and in that way enjoy by avoiding suffering, and that leads eventually to impersonal existence, and being frustrated by so many different improper, or as Prabhupada would say, bogus so-called spiritual paths which are offered in this world. And one has to offer one's faith to the Lord. One has to surrender and take shelter of the Lord. And then one can actually become happy. So that's what's always fascinated me about this literature. It's that it gives very solid, very precise definitions of what it actually means to be spiritual. What is actually spiritual? What is the catch? What makes this world the way it is? Why is this world such a bad place to be? It's because the inhabitants are bad. The inhabitants make the world what it is. And therefore, those who cherish this kind of consciousness, they are candidates for remaining in this world, and they will continue to make this world the way it is. So that's one great speciality about this literature, that it gives concrete, very specific, precise definitions, which can be observed actually. This is something which can be observed within this world. It's not just something that we have faith in, it's something that can be seen in this world on every step of the way. But also there's a warning, and that warning is that unless we actually become devotees of the Lord and try to love the Lord, and through that love, bhakti, then jnana and vairagya develop, then we can actually see this around us. Otherwise, so many bad things can be happening around us, and we will not see it in that way. There will still be hope that, okay, I have not succeeded. Nobody else in history so far has not succeeded. But perhaps somehow, by some arrangement, I will. So it sounds very simple and very actually trivial, but actually that's what it is. It's a choice. It's a choice. It's a personal choice that every soul has to make, to give up trying to be the Lord of this world, to give up trying to exploit the resources of the material nature, and to take up something which is completely the opposite, and that's loving the Lord. And by loving the Lord, then one learns to love everything actually in a proper way. So therefore envy is a thing of this world. If I want to get on top of others, if I want to prevail and be the one who is exploiting the resources and not have to suffer the exploitation of others, then naturally envy it goes well together with that kind of consciousness. If somebody is better than me in exploitation, then I am envious and I want to destroy them. That's also interesting. One other thing about this world, that in this world, some living entities actually desire the destruction of others, which means basically my existence is threatened by your existence. Therefore, in order for me to continue existing in the way that I want to exist, then you have to cease to exist. You have to disappear. You have to be destroyed. Not just moved somewhere else, but rather destroyed. Which is something that we do not find in the spiritual world. We find that even though there are different companies, groups of devotees who serve Krishna in different capacities and sometimes are even like rivals, there is no such a feeling in the spiritual world that we have to destroy this person, we have to destroy the other wing, the other gopi wing, because they want to be with Krishna and we have to destroy them. It's not like that. It's that they're doing something nice for Krishna, we want to also do something nice, we want to do better. So it's a competition to please Krishna, which is ever increasing, ever more blissful. And when that translates over to this world, then we have this unhealthy competition which resorts to destruction in order to win. That's one of the things that Duryodhana exemplified quite nicely. That was his mission in life. The Pandavas are better, so destroy. Therefore, after we destroy them, we will not have any problems anymore. Yeah. So that's the mentality of this world. And that mentality is again depicted in this nice history of battle between the Lord and the demon Hiranyaksha. It's the history of this world, the history of exploitation, forced, enforced selfishness, and the only solution is something which is completely the opposite, and that's love of Krishna prema. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions or comments, perhaps? Yes, please.
Thank you, Prabhu, for such a nice class. I wanted to just play devil's advocate for a little bit, just for sake of clarity. Sometimes our relatives who are not Krishna conscious, they say you become so selfish after becoming a Hare Krishna. You don't show up for any of these events. So-and-so's wedding was there, you didn't come. So-and-so's threads are, so many things like that. And you didn't show up. And you're all the while only with those devotees. You're only chanting Hare Krishna. What about helping us? What about taking care of us? You call yourself spiritual, but we see you're becoming more and more selfish. You see? From
Yes.
their perspective. Huh?
Yes.
You don't do this, you don't do that. Like that, they come with a list of complaints. So, what is your take on such situation?
Okay, if I can just repeat for the sake of the microphone here, I will try to repeat the question. Sometimes there is a complaint coming from people who are not devotees, and they accuse devotees of being devotees in Krishna consciousness of being selfish because they are not taking part in many of the social functions that the rest of the people or perhaps the family takes part in, and they are selective in terms of whom they will associate with. They want to associate devotees with devotees, they want to avoid non-devotee association, and like that in many ways devotees can be seen to appear selfish from that perspective. So yes, it's also interesting that even people try to remove this, nullify this discrimination and selectiveness from like it should not exist at all. People think that that's being spiritual, that you are not discriminating, that you are not selective, but that's also interesting from the perspective of Krishna consciousness. That's also not true. One cannot not discriminate. It's just the nature of life. We have to do that. And as Prabhupada wrote also in the Bhagavad Gita. Actually, being selfish and being violent towards others it means to act in such a way that so as to prolong the sufferings of others or to put them in a worse situation. So what we are doing when we are participating in such activities, following the standard of those who are doing such activities, like for example we have a wedding and somebody called us and therefore we are supposed to come. So by participating in that event on their terms, we are actually encouraging them in what they are doing. And what they are doing will ultimately bring them further unhappiness. So therefore we are harming them, even though temporarily they might be happy by our participation. But in the ultimate sense, we are not helping them. It's like you have beggars in the streets. Sometimes these beggars are very wicked people, actually. I've seen them in different parts of the world. It's different, but I've seen people who are beggars who are actually wicked. So you try to give them something nice and they become angry, you know. They come to beg and you want to give them food. They beg with this, that's their mantra, you could say. Please, I need to buy food, Then you try to give them some nice food and they become angry. Why? Because they want to use the money to buy alcohol or cigarettes or something else. So they're not honest in their dealings. So some people say, okay, you should be nice, you should give to them and make them happy. Give them money and make them happy. But by giving them money, one will not help them. They will squander the money. They will be hungry again. And even if they have honest means, an honest motivation, just by helping them that one time, it will not solve the problem. One has to come to their senses and realize that I am in this unpleasant situation because I did something wrong in the past. Not just because it's bad luck and it just happened so that I'm poor and I don't have anything. It's just one has to awaken to this consciousness that I am at fault. I am suffering now because I did something bad in the past. And in order for that suffering to completely go away, then I have to realize that I have to take responsibility. Okay, I am responsible, I was sinful, therefore I am suffering now. And try to look for a solution from that perspective. So, to make a long story short, basically, it's not that devotees cannot participate on some occasions in things like that, but they have to always be careful and have a good reason for that. Sometimes maybe we can help and elevate people by helping them in some ways, but that has to be considered individually, I think. Is that all right? Thank you. Yes.
Ja bih se samo nadovezao na hrvatskom s obzirom
da
slabo govorimo u vezi ovoga, znači te milostinje. Što nije pravo kad samo knjigama rekao da takvim ljudima se ne treba davati milostinje, da sva milostinja koja se daje, da se daje u hramove ili u procesu svjetlosti Krišne. Ili se na krivo shvatio?
Yes, you were. Yeah. You said about charity. Charity should be given to worthy persons because they can actually use it for the proper cause. Otherwise, that's why traditionally charity is given to brahmanas, those who are of the highest order of consciousness. Brahmanas, Vaishnavas, yeah. They can use it properly. Otherwise, they will just, it's not proper. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.